When I first started reading about urban planning during my postgrad, I came across two distinct ways of city building. First was the American way, and second was the Dutch way. And I chose to be radicalized by the Dutch city planning. Why? Because Dutch have successfully managed to build cities for their citizens and not for their cars. Every time I think about Dutch principles of city planning, I ask myself a question. Is it possible to do that in India? To find the answer, I decided to dig deeper into the history of urban planning of Dutch cities. And I think I may have just found the answer. Before we go ahead, let's clear out few things. In this video, I will mostly be talking about urban planning from cycling and walking point of view. I clearly understand that the scope of urban planning is far greater than that, but it is not the topic of this video. Hope we are on the same page. Let's begin. Anyone who is remotely related to urban design and city planning understands that Dutch cities are considered as the epitome of pedestrian and cycling friendly infrastructure. Every NRI in my Instagram feed boasts about how beautiful these cities are and how easy it is to walk and cycle there. But that wasn't the case 75 years ago. Most of the Dutch cities, as called by many researchers, were car gutters. They were all infested with traffic, pollution, congestion, and frequent accidents similar to what we see in present Indian cities. Back in 1950s, Netherlands, and for that matter, most Dutch cities followed the global trend of car-centric planning. They widened their roads, added more lanes, and built flyovers, assuming that more space for cars would mean smoother mobility. But they realized that cons of car centric planning were far greater than the pros. Soon, citizens started protesting. They started advocacy work and created grassroots movements for livable and cycle friendly cities. They were also successful to elect politicians who were pro cycling. This is just a reminder that politicians will do exactly what you elect them for. Most importantly, these elected politicians worked with the protesters and advocacy groups. What followed was a complete redesign of urban life: shared street, traffic calming measures, protected bike lanes, and massive bicycle parking facilities. Cycling wasn't just encouraged, it was made easier, faster, and more convenient than driving. But what inspired Dutch people to suddenly kick the cars out of their neighborhoods and embrace cycling? If we go back a little, we'll see that cycling was greatly popular during 1890s and 1920s. Amsterdam experienced a drastic increase in cycling. However, it was considered as the middle class status symbol and was only restricted to that strata of the society. It was after the First World War when cycling truly exploded in Dutch cities. The reason was hyperinflation in Germany, which enabled the Dutch to cheaply import German bicycles. By the 1938, 74% of Dutch roads feature cycling paths. Isn't that crazy? Cycling was at all-time high. But then what changed all of that? How Dutch cities went from cycling heavens to whatever this is. Car-centric planning was popularized in Netherlands in the 1950s and 60s thanks to the combination of skyrocketing ownership and urban renewal policies of the government. Economic boom after World War II made people rich enough to buy cars. As more people started buying cars, government also started investing in car-centric infrastructure. Many Dutch planners saw automobility as a crucial to preserving conditions of economic prosperity. During this period, car ownership increased by 500%, while public transport share reduced to 18%. Cycling also declined due to its so-called diminishing cultural status. Since cars needed more space, government demolished the existing infrastructure and built roads and parking spots on them. For example, planners in Utrecht filled the canal network to create a ring road and slapped four arterial through the core of medieval city. Oh dear God. Many younger Dutch citizens began to argue that cars should be banned from the city centers and gained increasing influence after the 1970s. It was supported by a 1971 nationwide survey which found that 64% of Dutch people were in favor of such policies. Increasingly, Dutch traffic engineers recognized that building new highways or adding new lanes was simply unsustainable as they generated more traffic according to the principle of induced demand, which simply means that adding one more lane to the highway will induce more people to drive on it, thus increasing the traffic than reducing it. Thanks to these groups, because I don't want to butcher the pronunciation, governments realized their wrongdoings, which led to the paradigm shift in the Dutch urban planning. See, the Dutch governments had created an infrastructure that favored speeding cars over pedestrians and cyclists. They had built wide roads and bulldozed human scale towns, which was hard to reclaim for pedestrians. Everything had to be redesigned in such a way that cyclists and cars could coexist safely. They mostly worked in three fronts: hardware, software, and orgware. Hardware included physical interventions in the built environment, such as separated cycling lanes, intersection improvements, traffic calming, and bike parking, which made cycling more attractive and convenient. Software included programs designed to educate and inform people about cycling to motivate them to switch modes. For example, bike education programs in schools have been shown to improve levels of cycling as children and their parents gain valuable skills on how to ride and maintain their bikes. Orgware, in my opinion, is the most important one, focused on collaborative development of bike policies with input from the community and advocacy organizations, as well as long term commitment to implementing these goals. I think there are three reasons to the massive success of Dutch city planning. First is the active protest of their citizens, role of advocacy groups in creating grassroots movements in favor of livable and cycling friendly cities. Second is the election of pro cycling politicians, which made it easier for them to lobby for cycling friendly infrastructure. Third is the acceptance of the government of their wrongdoings and actually working with the local cyclists and protesters to build a better environment. Don't get me wrong here, things were not as smooth and linear as I'm suggesting. It took 20 years of protest to actually fructify policies for better urban planning. It was not an overnight success for them. So is true for India. After researching about Dutch cities, it is very well possible to replicate their plans in India. It's just that we need the interplay of these three factors. Many researchers argue that Dutch cities were always cycle friendly, but as we have seen, it is not true. One thing Dutch cities have proved that it is possible to reverse the destruction caused by the car centric infrastructure. Additionally, creating urban infrastructure that is sustainable is more urgent nowadays due to ever increasing carbon emissions and global warming. This is especially applicable for India given its pollution levels, congestion, and overall poor living conditions. We need to work on three fronts. First is we lobby for better facilities, much like Dutch citizens. Second is we elect politicians who will convert our demands into policies. Third is our governments work with us and respect us for what we are, the citizens of this country. I hope you like this video. See you soon in the next one.